What's up, everybody? It's your girl Barbie J here with the recap and review of Tyler Perry's Beauty in Black, Season 1, Episode 11, Up Against the Wall. And I was like, who was up against the wall? And which wall was they up against? Did I miss that scene? But I know they don't mean it like that. I'm sorry, y'all. Anyway, the synopsis reads, a worsening lawsuit is the least of Mallory's problems as Horus sows chaos. Kimmy takes her search for Sylvie to dangerous new heights. Uh-oh. I guess that has to do with Roy, but we shall soon find out. So this episode starts with Jules finding out from his two security guys who are like cops too. I think they're really police officers, but they do part-time security or something for him. And all I could get is one of their names is Alex. And the tall, bald-headed one, I can't remember what his name is. But they tell him that Kimmy has killed both Body and Delinda. And he calls them his bottom biatches. That's what Jules calls them. So he is pissed. And he wants to find Kimmy because he about to kill her. He is pissed. So he sends them out. They go. And then we see Olivia. She's disappointed that her little sexy and handsome boy toy has like messed up this task she gave him to do, which was to kill Norman and make it look like a robbery. And I think that's the guys who were talking in that warehouse, and Norman was in the car with somebody else, and they had some kind of scanner where they could hear what they're talking about. I don't know how he did that, but he knew. And it's so funny because I didn't understand that scene when it was happening, but now it's pulling it all together. But anyway, because she was mad at this dude, he got nervous. He's like, I'll find out. I'll find another way. I'll try to make it work. She said, nah, Igga. She's made him get inside of a plastic bag. She said, you know how this goes. And she told him to get in the bag and zip himself up. And he was like, no, please. And he was shaking and started begging. And she was like, stop it now. You know I said stop it. I don't like no begging or something like that. You know how this goes. And so he got in there and zipped it up. And then the top was open, and one of those security guys that was with her shot him in the head, and he fell over and dead. I said, oh my goodness, he was shaking like a leaf, but he gone now. Anyway, then we have Horace is talking to Varney, and he tells him that his father wrote in the will that if anyone was convicted of a felony, they'd forfeit their shares. So Horace wants to know what kind of felony he's talking about. And he says a Class B felony. And Horace is like what? So he asks him if running a criminal organization is a Class B, and Varney says yes. So Varney asks Horace, he want to share what he's thinking. And Horace said, if I wanted to share, I would have told you. And he said, oh, okay, sir. And then he leaves. But I'm telling y'all, I don't like Varney now. I don't like the way he's playing this game. And you're the family attorney. You shouldn't be going back and forth, working with this one and working with that one and telling all the little business like Jules is doing, because it's not going to end well for you. Jules is making money. You're not, Varney. So now we have Horace. He calls Jules and tells him to look at the picture that he sent him of Angel, and then asks Jules if he knows him. And he said no. He said, well, can you find him? He said, yeah. So he tells him that he's in some car he thinks is stolen and gives him the license plate and everything. And so Jules asks him what he wants him to do with Angel when he finds him. And Horace says, just call me when you find him. He said, I'll tell you. He said, I was in the hospital or something like that, and I think he stole my watch. And he said, I just want to talk to him. He said, okay. So then Jules calls the two security cops, whatever they are, and asks them to find Angel. And then they tell him that Rain has been moved to another hospital and they don't know where. And Jules is pissed. And he said, Kimmy and Rain are probably together. You better find them now. Meanwhile, we have Varney. He goes to see Charles and tells him that he thinks his father, Horace, is up to something because he keeps asking about the restrictions in the will. And he thinks that he's trying to cut him, his mother, and his brother out of the will. And Charles is real relaxed. He's like, he can't do that. So what? And he said, well, he keeps talking about the part in the will about a felony. And then Charles was like, so, you know what? So he gave him an example of what could be considered a felony, because he said Charles likes to live his life on the edge. And Charles is not even taking him serious, you know? He told him, thanks for the warning, and then told him he could leave now. And I was like, wow. This is the man you've been having sex with. You want him to come out to your family. Y'all both supposed to be in love with each other, but I think it's only a one-sided thing. I think Barney's the one who's in love with Charles, and I don't know why. But if any of you know why, please put it down in the comment section because I am totally baffled. So now we see Norman, he's calling Jules and tells him to bring Debo to him. And then Jules tells Norman, we got more important things to do because I got a call from your brother about Angel. And he's like, who's Angel? And he's like, this kid from the club. So then Jules tells him that Horace said he stole his watch. And Norman said, uh-oh, I feel sorry for that kid. And Jules was like, why? He said, because a watch to Horace is like my wife is to me. And I said, damn. And so Norman asks about Debo again, and Jules said he'll take care of him and let's just move on. And Norman said, MFR, my wife is dead. F you. I'm not moving on. He said, you know what? I'll do it myself. Meaning he'll kill Debo himself or whatever. And he said he's dead. And he started laughing. Norman started laughing like, oh, how convenient this is. He's like, wow, you really don't trust me, Jules is saying. And he said, I don't trust anybody when it comes to my wife. So Jules is telling him he needs to calm down and talk to his brother. And he said, my wife is dead. And that's all you could talk about. And he hangs up on Jules. So now we see that attorney, Lena Walton, the one who's suing the Beauty and Black company on behalf of all of these people who got cancer. And she calls Mallory to talk settlement. And Mallory tells her she should be talking to her father-in-law or their legal department. And Lena tells her, we all know you run that place. And Mallory said, you're right. And she hangs up on her. So now we see Angel. He gets pulled over by Jules' guys who are, remember, also cops. And they had the lights flashing and all that stuff. And they asked for license and registration. And when Angel opens the glove compartment, there's a gun. And they yell, gun, get out the car, And he's like, all right, all right. Then they switched over to Harold. He's meeting with Norman. And he tells him what happened to his hand and that Horace had threatened him. And so Norman asked him, does he want a drink? He said, yeah, I could take a bourbon. So he pours him a drink, and then Norman is still asking him questions. And Harold tells Norman that Horace was asking him questions about him and Jules, and he swears that he didn't tell anything. And then Harold gets a text message, and Norman tells him to check it. He said, I'll check it later. He said, check it. And when he does, Harold sees a picture of his daughter in college, and Harold starts begging, man, please, that's my daughter, that's my daughter. He's like, if I hear that you said anything or any of this come back to me, he said, you gonna be worried. He said, my daughter means everything to you. He said, yeah, my wife meant everything to me too. And he said, now drink your drink. And his hands were shaking. He said, dude, it ain't poison. His hand was shaking. He couldn't even drink that damn drink. It was so funny. Anyway, so now we see Mallory. She's at work and she sees Roy walking by. She calls him into the conference room and speaks to him about Lena and his video fighting with the protesters that has gone viral. And he doesn't even care and he walks out. So she calls Calvin and tells him to follow Roy. Calvin is being difficult, not following orders, wanting to stay around her, and he tries flirting with Mallory, and she tells him to get the F out, and as he tried to talk, she cuts him off again, tell him go. And he says, don't cry, but if you must, he digs in his pocket and hands her something black. And she said, what is this? And he said, your underwear from the other night. And he walked out, leaving her standing there, and I was like, oh, snap. So now we have Jillian going over there apologizing to Calvin for what she had to do. They forced her, I think, to give head to Roy. She didn't want to do it, but like Kimmy and all of them, they stuck in these positions with Jules. So she's letting him know what he did with Mallory, he just did. He didn't have to do it. He said, well, I wanted to do it. And he told her, now get away from him. And she said, you just trying to make me suffer. And he said, you did it to yourself. She said, well, if you keep on with this, I'm going to tell Mallory's husband, Roy. And he said, go ahead and do it. Tell him. Because he know Roy's a little punk. And Calvin probably could beat Roy, let's be honest. So now we see Alex and Traxon. Traxon is that other police officer that I couldn't remember his name earlier. And they have Angel handcuffed in the back of a car in some sort of abandoned parking garage. And Angel is scared and he's yelling, wait, wait. And they drive off. leaving him there. And then we see Horace come over and he opens the car door and tells Angel to get out. And he asks him, "Do you know who I am?" And he's like, "You my daddy, right?" He's like, "Igga, please." So he tells him that the house he took him to was where he was going to put him and Kimmy up in there. And all they had to do was take care of him. Angel was like, "Serious?" He said, "Yeah, but that ship done sailed now." Meanwhile, those two police officers, they were trying to listen in to the conversation. They bugged the vehicle, but Horace and Angel are outside of the vehicle, so they can't hear anything. So Horace asked Angel to tell him about Kimmy. He said, "What do you want to know?" He said, "Everything. I want to know everything." He said, "Is she trustworthy?" He said, "Yeah, she's real trustworthy." He said, "A horse?" She said, "No, no, Kimmy's not like that." He said, "She just got caught up in some stuff because of me, and Jules got me caught up in it." So Horace said, "Tell me everything you know. I'm serious." He said, "Okay, I will." So now we see Attorney Varney. He goes to meet with Mallory and tells her he's going to meet with Lena Walton to see what info she has. And he suggests that Beauty in Black hires another litigator to scare the crap out of her. So she asks him to run the numbers, give them to her, and she'll discuss it with the board. And so now, instead of him leaving, Loose Lips Varney decides to tell Mallory that she needs to talk to her father-in-law because he keeps asking questions about stipulations in the will. And then he says he feels like he's betraying Horace. And I'm thinking to myself, because you are, fool, you are. So he gets up to leave, and she sees Calvin standing outside her office, and she gets up and thanks Varney for all he does, and she starts hugging on him. And Varney is so shocked, he's surprised, he don't know what's going on. And then she steps back, and the next thing you know, Roy comes in and is accusing Varney of sleeping with his wife. And he tells Varney that he's fired. And Mallory's like, "Roy, stop it." And she's like, "If your father finds out," he said, "Oh, when my father finds out, he's going to fire him. That's what he's going to do." And Varney's like, "But I didn't do nothing." He's like, "Nick, please." And he walks out. And so Varney's looking at Mallory and she's like, "Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Just continue with business as usual." And I'm looking at Mallory sideways like, "See, you playing games with Calvin instead of just dismissing Calvin. You don't have to keep him. You keep him around for a reason. You could easily tell Jules to get me somebody else, but you don't. You want to play this game, and now you got Varney mixed up in it." But I don't feel so bad for Varney because he's is betraying Horace. He went and told Charles something. He went and told Mallory something. You're betraying him. You're the family attorney, not certain members' attorney. So now we at the end of the episode. Kimmy's at the hotel. She's walking down the hallway about to go to Roy's room when she gets a call from Rain, who's asking where she's at. Is she really going to do it? She's trying to talk Kimmy out of it. She's telling her to be calm. "Why are you there? Why are you doing this?" "Because I want to find out if they have my sister. I want to know where she is." She said, "What if he doesn't even know?" "They must know. I got to try. I got to find out." She said, "No, come back, please. I don't want you to do it." They going back and forth with this. So Kimmy promises Rain that she's coming back to the hospital now. Because Rain was talking about she getting out of bed and coming to the hotel. So she said, "I'll be there within an hour." But of course, Kimmy didn't keep her word. She knocked on the door. Roy opens it for her. He's like, "What the F is that you wearing and all that stuff? You need to learn how to dress." And she's like, "Where's my sister?" He's like, "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about your sister." She's like, "Where is my sister?" And she said, "Roy, I'm going to ask you one last thing." He said, "What did you call me? How do you know my name?" She said, "Roy Bellary." He said, "Who the F told you my name?" She said, "Your wife is Mallory and your father is Horace." And he's like, "Okay." He was like, "Whoa." And she's like, "I just want to know where my sister is." He said, "I don't know anything about your lost sister." And she said, "Call Jules." This is the stupid part. She's always telling people to call Jules. She told Angel to call Jules, and now she's telling him. She got Jules' number. Why don't she call Jules? Call Jules and say, "Where's my effing sister?" Stop telling everybody else to call. So anyway, instead of her playing the game like Rain told her, she's being reckless. You know, she's telling him, "Of course you don't know where my sister is. They wouldn't tell you a dumbass anything," or something like that. She cursing and calling him names. And he stood up and said, you forget who the dominant one is here. And she said, oh, you're the dominant one? He said, yeah, I'm the dominant one. And she smacks him across the face. And he's like, what? Then she picked up the champagne bottle and slapped him across the head. And he fell to the floor. And then she hit him again with it. And she tried to swing a third time. And he knocked her down and then threw her across the floor, caused all kind of biatches and stuff. And she's crawling over trying to get up. And he grabbed her and was choking her, something like that. And she grabbed the glass off the bar and smashed it over his head. And so then he tries to get his bearings and he wobbles over to the terrace door. And she gets up and finally gets her strength and she runs and pushes him. And he flies through the glass and falls out the window. And I'm sitting there going, the way she pushed him, how did she stop herself from going along with him? Because she did a running push. So that was kind of crazy to me. But I said, what are you doing, Kimmy? And they show her standing there, so she must have saw when he landed on the balcony below. Here we are thinking he's dead, but he's not. So anyway, that's how the episode ended. Y'all let me know down in the comment section what y'all thought about it. I thought it was pretty entertaining, like all the other episodes. And I like the action. All this action is doing something to me. I don't know. It's getting me excited, y'all. I must be crazy. I don't know. But again, put it down in the comment section what y'all thought, and I will see you all in the next video. Please do not forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, write a comment on the video, and then share the video. It's your girl Barbie J saying peace.